What is up, Razorback Nation? Good Sunday afternoon. We are back with you for this week's Razor Recap, and we are brought to you by our friends over at Razor Pigs. Looking good, never felt so fun. Razor Pigs is the Arkansas-born brand, bringing some serious style to the golf course, tailgate, and everywhere in between. From high-quality polos to head-turning hats, they've got what you need to rep the natural state with pride. Found it right here at home and now run by a Razorback-loving family. Razor Pigs is where comfort meets cool, so go hog wild and shop Razor Pigs today at razorpigs.us. And our friends over at Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer. You can check them out today. If you are in Northwest Arkansas, you can check out the Core Brewery tap room where you can get Scarlet Letter in all its various flavors on tap, as well as their new hard iced teas. So we'll jump in and kind of get an overview first. So Arkansas, loses by 3 to Tennessee last night on the road. And I think this was a surprising game, 34-31, field goal short. I think this Arkansas team showed some life. And it was refreshing to see. Unfortunately, some of the same trends we've seen this season continued. But overall, I think I've seen a little bit of improvement in this team. What's your general thoughts before we dive into some stats and look at some of the details in this game?
I think that's a good analysis. You saw some improvements. Offensively, they didn't quit like they did against Notre Dame, which is good. Even when they were down by 3 scores, they ended up coming back 2 unanswered touchdowns to get within 3 to actually give themselves a fighting chance. But I'm more impressed with the defense. And obviously, they gave up almost 500 yards and still gave up 34 points, yada, yada, yada. But they stopped them 5 times. I don't think they've forced 5 punts since I guess Arkansas State. Did they even force 5 punts against Arkansas State? Now that I think about it. But at the same time, they just looked different. They came out.
Right.
They were a lot of bend, but they're also playing one of the best offenses in the country. Georgia didn't hold Tennessee back that much. So if Arkansas's offense would have went out there and did what it's supposed to do, played all 4 quarters, Arkansas probably walks away with a win.
I agree. And, it's one of those things to your point. I think that was the biggest thing. In the second half, you saw Arkansas get down, 34-17, and you're like, all right, here we go again. Kind of same old. This team, offense isn't going to be able to do the thing. Defense is going to continue to let them just do what they want. And, this game's over with. But that wasn't the case here. This team came out, struggled a little bit in the third quarter. Some of that, I don't know how much that was to do with some technical difficulties as well due to the having no comms for a little bit there. But, it seemed like they're near the end of the third quarter and into the fourth quarter. They were able to find some life on the offensive side. Defense was able to get you a couple stops that allowed you to come back and score and put this game within reach, within a field goal. And to your point, it's not drastic, but you saw some improvement. This defense was able to give you stops when you kind of needed them. They're able, like you said, we were able to force some punts, which hadn't happened a lot this season. I think if you look at it, and we'll dive more into them in a little bit, but if you don't have some of those turnovers that you did, like you said, Arkansas could have come close to walking away with this game.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, 2 of those turnovers, Tennessee did nothing with.
Right.
Arkansas's defense came out there and did what they were supposed to do. And you can't ask them to do much more than that against that type of offense. I think it was a complete 180. Obviously, there's still some growing pains there, but what else can you expect a guy to do in just 2 weeks, right? I'm not sitting here trying to say Bobby for next head coach, but at the same time, you got to give him a little bit of room to work. You can't just be like, I see a lot of tweets and posts about, Sam won against Tennessee last year, Bobby didn't. I'm like, well, they're 2 different teams. One, they got different, more dynamic quarterback at the helm right now. Plus, this is still Sam's team. Whether you want to believe it or not, he hasn't had enough time to develop this into his team. And I'm not saying it's going to be enough to win them the job. But at the same time, a lot of these people are they're upset that Arkansas lost, and they're just taking it out on social media.
Well, and you look at it too, and if you watch the press conference after the game, Bobby was talking a little bit about how, for what the changes he wanted to make on defense and everything, he said they only really probably worked on that for about a week. They didn't really necessarily work on it too much in the during the bye week, but when it came into game planning this week, and mentioning, maybe going back to like he kept saying, going back to basics, getting back to your alignments, your stances, all of that stuff, and then on top of that, prepping for an actual game week, they within a week. I feel like this is some improvement that you like to see. And then what will you see throughout the rest of the season as he kind of continues to implement what he's doing? Will you see this defense kind of slowly progress and get to a point where, yeah, they may not be great, but they're salvageable for the rest of the season? You've still got, after last night, not saying 100%, but the rest of the season doesn't worry me as much as I don't think we're going to get blown out the rest of every game the rest of the season. We might actually be competitive and, fight in some of these games and keep it close, just like we did yesterday.
Right. I mean, like, look at Texas. Texas doesn't look good. And they at the beginning of the season, we all thought they were going to be the hardest team on the schedule. Look at LSU, only put up 20 points against South Carolina. A&M may be the best team left on our schedule. Maybe Missouri. They looked pretty good against Alabama, but Alabama hasn't looked good. So sometimes at some points this year, but they're still like 5-1. So who knows? The whole like big problem with this whole season is that we are like 10 points away, maybe 13 points away from being 5-1.
Right.
In a year where the NCAA or where football is completely just out of sorts. I mean, we watched Indiana beat the crap out of Oregon yesterday, which I'm mad about because I didn't pick them. And then you have the SEC, which who's going to win that?
Seems wide
right
open.
now. It looks wide open. It's probably going to be Alabama or Georgia again, but they look beatable, right? So it just sucks that at this point in the season, that's what happens. And the thing is, if you go 4-0, you think you play that bad against Notre Dame? Probably not. You probably have a decent game there. So even that 5-1, hypothetical, it could be 6-0. You don't know because you don't know how they would have played if they actually had some confidence going into that Notre Dame game.
Right, and there weren't all these rumors swirling around about your coach getting fired potentially, and all these other things, and so to your point, those hypotheticals and what ifs, you're like, you're sitting here talking a very different spot right now. We're not even talking about a coaching search, a lot of other factors, but for what it is and to where Arkansas came out and competed, I didn't necessarily think or hardly think at all that we were going to win this game. But to see us come out and play Tennessee to 3 points, I am surprised. And, not going to say it's acceptable to lose, but, I'll sit with this result. It could have been much, much worse. It could have been very similar to, the Notre Dame game where it's, 50 something to 14. And because that's the type of team Tennessee is, they can put up that type of points. But, in the week and a half or so, the way Bobby described it in his presser after the game, I feel like there's been a decent amount of improvement with this team. Some guys have bought in. You saw, on the defense, guys getting set up better, still not the best, but, you saw guys flying to the ball, making effort. And so, I feel like as the season goes, maybe, there'll be slight improvement week to week. And then on the offensive side of things, Mike Washington was clearly right about one thing, and that was this Tennessee defense had holes, and, he did a really good job about finding them.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about it. Tennessee stopped Arkansas maybe like once or twice. Other than that, Arkansas really shot themselves in the foot a whole lot. Now, granted, we're talking about the defense doing a good job. The officials helped Arkansas out a little bit. Okay,
Right.
I'm not going to be the homer guy that's like, oh, no, it was fair and all this. There were a couple calls that were. But the thing is, that's happened enough against Arkansas that I don't care if it happens in favor of Arkansas, right? I don't feel super bad because it happens. It happens all the time. But those 3 fumbles, those really crucial, but they offset those penalties too.
Right.
And all it took was Tennessee to capitalize on one of Arkansas's mistakes to actually go up. And the whole thing about one of the big topics after the game was that that field goal not being taken and going for 4th and 4. You know what? At the same time, I don't mind it because you're at the opponent's 25, right? You kick a field goal, you make it, whatever. They still get the ball basically right where you are. If you don't make it, you don't get the points, and they get the ball right where they are. If everything else happened the same and they kicked that field goal, Tennessee goes down and kicks the field goal to win the game anyway, right? I know that there's a little bit of a chance where Tennessee misses that field goal, but I don't think that's big a deal as it was. It's not as big a deal as the 3 fumbles for sure.
Right.
And you know what? Like, about those 3 fumbles, 2 of them were exactly the same. Exactly the same. I don't know if Taylor Green just needs to stop throwing whenever he runs to his left, because when he runs to his left, I don't know if he just thinks he's always that much faster than people or what, or if he takes a huge drawback whenever he throws to his left, but it looks so slow, and that gives that defender a little bit of time to get there and hit that, because that's happened more than once when he's rolling out and someone catches him from behind. But that at the same time, he's trying to throw and he's trying to make a play. And the Tennessee guy also made a play. So, there's a whole lot of people that were getting on to Talon about that. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. I don't know. That's not a ball security issue. That's just a really, really, really good play by Tennessee.
Right.
Twice
100%.
in a row. But at the same time, if you see it happening again and again, hey, maybe run. Don't pass when you're going out to the left.
And just don't try to find somebody. Just do what you do best and tuck it and go.
Yeah.
And so I
was going to talk about that. I mean, I can't blame him for thinking that he can outrun people like that even when he's throwing, because you had that, what was it, a 3rd and 7 play where they bring an all-out blitz and he just outruns the entire Tennessee defense for a first down plus 10, 15 yards. He's an insane athlete. He's just got to make better choices, I guess.
Right. Maybe be a little bit more aware, of whoever's in pursuit, things like that.
Right.
But, you dive into it with this offense. So let's look at Taylor Green's day. 21 of 31, 256 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. On the ground, 17 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown as well. We mentioned those fumbles. So, this is a Taylor Green we've seen all season, with maybe asterisks around the Notre Dame game, over 300 yards of offense, accounted for 3 total touchdowns in this game, really made some plays in this game that kept this offense, kept drives alive. And then, you flip to the running backs. Heck of a day by Mike Washington. 19 carries, 131 yards, and a touchdown. Like I said earlier, he mentioned this defense has holes, and boy, was he finding them easily and ripping off run after run after run. easily his best game of the season. And, that's the type of potential we knew he had. And, it's glad to see both him and Talon getting it back rolling in this game. And then, of course, you have Braylon Russell, 8 carries for 47 yards, where he just was out there running over people. Unfortunately, he did have that one fumble that he lost. But at the end of the day, between Green and Washington, Russell, good day on the ground. It's like Transplant Texan here said here, Washington, Russell, can we put the RB1 controversy to rest? Russell fumbles again and fails to get the same type of yards per carry as Washington.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, though. Like, he did insane in the first half, but Mike Washington was also kind of shut down in the second half. But here's the dangerous thing about Arkansas's offense is that when you shut down one aspect, another aspect opens. That's why, like, they only had 83 yards rushing. And I say only 83 yards rushing. How many did they have in the first half? Like 160. Let me go back and check. But they only had 100 or 83 yards rushing in the second half. But in comparison, Arkansas had 160 yards passing, which was quite a bit different than the first half. Let me pull up those numbers real quick. Yeah, so in the first half, Arkansas had 157 yards rushing, which by itself is insane. In passing yards, they had 95.
Right.
Flip it to the second half, Arkansas has 83 yards rushing and 160 yards passing. So it's like it doesn't matter what aspect you try to stop, Arkansas is going to come at you the other way, right? And Tennessee, they were
great
just
adjustment by Petrino too offensively. Clearly seeing they've adjusted to the ground game. So let's open up our passing game. And he talked about it like it's nice having some accountability. Not saying Pittman didn't, but just the way Petrino went about his press conference after the game, I was like, this is fantastic. The way he talked about things, but he talked about these guys, how kind of, in that second half, it seemed like 3, 4, 5, 6 plays, things started going wrong. One guy would do something wrong, the next play, another guy. And it seemed like, what we've seen so far this season, we were starting to crumble a little bit. But these guys rallied around each other and figured out a way to, hey, we're not going to just continue to fall apart here. We're going to get back up and we're going to find a way to, continue to get ourselves back in this game. And that's what they did. And to your point, they flipped the script in the second half, got the passing game going, and then, still were able to run the ball a little bit. But, it was a great adjustment and kind of chess approach with Heupel as far as what he did to adjust Tennessee on defense to, Bobby saying, all right, I see you. And so now I'm going to switch and get my passing game going.
Right. And whenever you have two offensive, for lack of a better word, geniuses going at it like that, that's what you're going to have. That third quarter, to be honest, it wasn't a great third quarter for Tennessee either.
No.
Arkansas stopped them at the beginning of the half, held them to a field goal, and then finally they started to get on track. So it was a good chess match between the two. Now, kind of looking forward towards looking towards Texas A&M, I feel like there's a complete opposite. Whenever you're talking about offensive mind versus kind of a decent defensive mind in Mike Elko. So I'm really excited to see how that kind of turns out. Like I think Tennessee is a better team than Texas A&M, but I think Texas A&M is a harder team to beat for Arkansas than Tennessee was, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how this team responds after another really close loss. And I think that the way that they responded so already has been tremendous. Like from everything that I hear from like Bobby Trino or like, things online or people that I know, it's like they've bought in again. You know what I'm saying? it's pretty inspiring if you really think about it. They could be like Oklahoma State, where there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 guys jumping in a portal already. But no, they're holding on. They're keeping going, and they showed some I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say sassiness because that's not manly enough for it. But they showed some stuff out there, like that first that first touchdown.
A little bit of grit.
A little grit. There you go, grit. But that first touchdown, and Omega Blake's out there double flipping the bird. All those Tennessee fans,
right? That caught on camera and everything.
Yeah. And what's funny is like there's a famous photo of like a Tennessee player doing that to Alabama fans. So it just kind of felt, good. I'm just glad they didn't have a whole lot of mustard bottles out there to throw at them. So
right.
But yeah, it was attitude was good. Attitude was good yesterday.
Yeah. And, as we run through the rest of these offensive numbers on the receiving end of things, you had Raylan Sharp lead all receivers with 7 catches for 76 yards. Omega Blake, 5 catches for 65 yards. CJ Brown, 3 for 50. Cam Shanks, 3 for 44 and a touchdown. Rohan Jones, 1 for 9 and a touchdown. Mike Washington, 1 for 6 and 1 for 6. And then Jaden Platt, 1 for 6. So, we're continuing to spread the ball around. I think this is the first game that Omega Blake didn't lead you in receptions. And so, that's good to see that, when he is shut down, that other guys can step up like your Raylan Sharp, CJ Brown, Cam Shanks. This is the first time that we've really seen him get, super involved in the passing game this season. So,
and that's probably has to do with
Jaylen Brown being out.
Jaylen Brown being out. But it is good to see him because I like whenever I saw his stuff, his film, versus anybody else that came in the transfer portal, he's probably the one that I was the most excited about, just because he does have that open field like ability, and you kind of saw that a little bit too. He had, I don't know, does he have yards after catch on here? I don't think it does. But he had quite a bit. I know that for sure. He especially those drag routes or those crossing routes. Bobby Trino's known for those. They're always wide open. Yeah, he just looks really fast. He's not very big. So he gets lost too. That's how they got that touchdown, that last touchdown. So when you have a guy who's like 5'9", he kind of, that's to some point, that's kind of a good thing. But yeah, I still like that he's going from one person to another. And like Rohan Jones, one reception, 1 touchdown. The guy's almost perfect for like receptions and touchdowns, being 1-to-1 ratio.
He's just a touchdown machine.
Yeah, that's all he does. He just gets touchdowns. It doesn't matter where he is on the field either. If he touches the ball, it's good likelihood that he's going to go score a touchdown.
Right. And the real question is, going forward to like transplanted Texan, and Ty here saying, transplant Texan saying, all right, now will Petrino be able to transition from this game being a moral victory of, we only lost by 3 points, it was a 1-score game, to an actual win with this Pittman roster is to be determined. Kind of on that same page, Ty here says, yesterday's loss can build a lot of confidence for the Hogs. Unlike Memphis and Ole Miss that were heartbreaking losses, yesterday they put up a fight. Much respect for the response. Exactly. I mean, instead of just, we got down, and instead of kind of just laying down and being like, all right, there's no chance here, we were able to fight, come back and get this within, a spot where, if we could have got a stop in those last 2.5 minutes, there's a chance we could go down and either tie it or win the game. And, another thing Ty mentioned here is Petrino holding players accountable. Pittman seemed too nice, but also Petrino holding Petrino accountable. If you listen to him in that press conference, he mentioned the whole deciding to go for it and not kick the field goal thing. He said, that was on me, which was, a nice thing to hear, a coach taking the accountability. And I scroll up here. Transplant Texan mentioned this. Not one I don't know was mentioned in that press conference. So,
yeah. Well, he's definitely more polished.
Yeah.
Definitely more polished. But when it comes to leading a group of men like that, I mean, he has decades of experience. So there's that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
Right.
I think but what it is a surprise is that he's got these kids to buy in so fast.
Right.
Right.
From
So
2
I
weeks
think,
ago, Pittman being the head coach to, you're on the road at Tennessee with an interim head coach and you play them to 3 points.
yeah, just not only that though. I mean, you get rid of the entire defensive staff.
True.
Right? You would think that the entire defense would be like not for you. They don't give a crap about you. But there's something that at least, for what Pittman did, he did instill, like try to instill anyway, a love for the university and a love for, the Razorback itself. And I feel like that's kind of what they're doing. And if they're not playing for that, they're playing for each other, which that was Pittman's doing, right? Let's not not give him his flowers. He built that type of culture. There was just the other things like, the quit and the not being able to face adversity well, those type of things. In the game anyway, those are where really Pittman fell flat in decision making, stuff like that. That's where you hope that like when Bobby Petrino comes in here, he can kind of like take over that part. Like he just has to kind of halfway build a culture instead of building an entire one from scratch. So yeah, like you said, I'm excited to see what they do the rest of the season, and I don't see them really getting blown out again.
Yeah, 100%. Glad to have. I'm just saying, jumping in here with us, but yeah, I mean, you look at it, it's a good thing to where, to your point, part of this is Pittman. He built this team, built this culture, established that, and kind of, you said it earlier, with Petrino being a little bit more polished, he was able to kind of navigate. We were down and being able to, get these guys to continue to fight instead of, just not letting it, get worse in a sense. So,
right.
Transplant Texan mentioned here, throwing in some fun words here too. The juxtaposition between Pittman and Petrino is like night and day. Also a difference between someone that's been a position coach compared to someone that's been a veteran head coach. And that's kind of what we've been hinting on. You can see that difference there in one game. Now, what will it be as you go throughout the rest of the season? I mean, you look at it defensively, quickly look at some numbers. You had Steven Dix Jr. lead you in tackles with 11, Xavier Sori with 8, Miguel Mitchell, Larry Worth, two guys in the secondary, both with 7, Justice Boone with 6, Kunai Walker with 6, Caleb Wooden with 6. So, a lot of these secondary guys playing better, getting more involved in, for lack of better, not letting guys just run by them and actually getting involved in, making tackles and things like that.
Yeah. Now there were, especially toward the end, there were a bunch of those like 30-yard chunk plays.
Right.
Which, at the same time, the first person that got to him tackled him. So that's at least, some success there. But at the same time, you still have those problems. And a lot of it has to do with your guys up front, specifically the ones in the middle, like Ian Jaffard, Campbell. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. It's hard to see that where they have been on the defensive line to where they are now, especially in the middle. It's just kind of like Eric Gregory. You really miss Eric Gregory, right?
Yeah.
Having him there was a lot bigger deal than what people really, what people realize. And now you got Campbell, which he's been, not as good as you thought he was going to be. And then a redshirt sophomore who is a little bit over, a little too much for his frame, a little bit slower than the rest of them. So I don't know. That sucks. But at the same time, the pieces around him should be fine. Like you should have Stephen Dix and Xavier Story leading the defense and tackles every single game like this. So they're kind of doing their job, and then at the same time, they're still getting beat too. So it's a work in progress.
Right. And you saw a little bit of a breakout from a guy like Justice Boone on the edge, coming in with 6, tackles as well.
Right. Yeah, that kind of surprised me. I've been high on Philip Lee, and he only got 1 today. Didn't hear his name called a whole lot.
Right. And then, of course, David Oki being out.
Right. So, yeah, it's good to see Justice Boone finally coming up. I thought he was going to be a bigger deal than what he has been. So, I mean, six tackles, that's not bad. What's his name? Another defensive tackle, Danny Sully.
Oh, Danny Sully. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, at the same time, I don't think he's got let me look.
No stats registered.
He didn't record a stat. But he almost really screwed Arkansas up, too, right there. Towards the end of the game, I think it was the third quarter. I'm not sure. But where he jumped off sides, but then you have the Tennessee center pick up the ball instead of snap it. And like this is where like I kind of start feeling bad for Tennessee because of the penalties, because it should have been offsides penalty, but it also should have been a snap infraction. Right? They should have been offsetting penalties, but for some reason they didn't penalize Arkansas, which was weird. But at the same time, like, you can't pick up the ball like that. It doesn't matter. Matter if you jump off sides. If you pick up the ball, it's a snap infraction. It doesn't matter why you picked up the ball. So yeah, that was a super funny thing. But like, you got to have that discipline. Is what I'm trying to say. That Sully didn't have. And like, if you're not going to go out there and get tackles, but you're going to go out there and hurt the team like that, it's hard to put you out there, but at the same time, they don't have anybody behind them. So it's kind of just a lack of depth is the problem.
Right. And, I'm just saying, jumps in there and says, he said he's got mixed feelings at this point. Yeah, we saw improvement, but the same results, another shoulda, woulda, coulda, 1-score loss and 2 million fumbles. I agree with everything there. And, I think the thing that's got me a little positive is to at least see that, it was another shoulda, coulda, woulda, but it seemed like a different, it wasn't like, it seemed like the game was in Arkansas's, bag the whole time, and then you just give it away at the end. It was kind of almost the opposite. You thought for a minute there Tennessee was about to just run away with it, but this team found a way to fight back and get back into the game and make it one of those close losses. So I feel like I get what you're saying, but also in another sense, it gives me a little bit of positivity just because, as much as I hate to say it, if this was a game, put the same results in and you had Pittman head coaching, I don't think we probably fight back as much and, try to make a comeback, if you will. Nothing against him, but just, I think that's part of the change you see with kind of Petrino taking over.
Yeah, and I think I tweeted it out. I don't remember if I just thought it or I tweeted it out, but whenever that third fumble happened, I thought it felt like that game against LSU last year, where Arkansas is down by like 3 in the third quarter, and then what's his name? Green throws that weird interception to Weeks, and it just kind of fell off at that point.
Yeah, snowballed from there.
Yeah, and Arkansas's whenever they played yesterday, it snowballed, but they stopped and they pushed back. And here's the thing. Yeah, there was some things that you saw that they've struggled with. But the thing is, if you thought you weren't going to see those after seeing it for the first half of the season, I got some beachfront property to sell you in Arkansas. Like, there's no way that they were going to fix everything overnight, basically. Right. But what they did, they did fix some things, or at least the things that can be fixed fast, which is mostly attitude and getting your guys in position and doing the fundamentals, because those are the things that they've done since they were in Pee Wee. It shouldn't be hard to get back to them. And then obviously having a good attitude is just having a good mindset. So that's something you can
The things
change.
that'll come later is, as you continue to improve, looking at your scheming and things like that, that'll come as you continue to shift and, you get back to the basics, and then you can build off that into, maybe changing up some alignments, changing up some defensive scheming and things like that. And so, I will say I loved, even though at one point he mentioned, I probably should have kicked field goal. I love seeing some aggressiveness out of this team on, fourth and shorts. Right at the beginning of the game, you get into a 4th and 1. What does Petrino do? Line up under center and do essentially an Arkansas version of the tush push with lining Maddox Laster up behind Talon, snapping the ball and just going for it and, converting a 4th and 1.
Laster's got to be careful, dude. It looked like he was about to break Green's back. Did you go back and rewatch that play? He Green nearly did a full bend right there. Dude, be a little bit careful with your quarterback. I mean, goodness gracious. Got 4 or 5 yards out of it. Jeez. You don't want to put your quarterback in a wheelchair. Dang.
I agree with that. But, again, it was good to see that, some of that a little bit more aggressive where instead of just punting the ball away, let's actually try to go for it and get it, which was, like I said, a change of pace to see for this team. I mean, out of our 4th downs, we're 50%. We got it once and we didn't get it once. And then on 3rd down, you're about the same, 7 of 13. So you're a little bit over 50%. So, a little bit of change there. Like Transplant Texan said here, push the tush, not the back. Yeah, go a little bit lower and get the little bit lower down there if you're pushing. So, but yeah, and you're mentioning changing some of those basic things. Penalties. Arkansas had 1 for 10 yards. Tennessee had 10 for 78. And Transplant said that was signs of discipline. Agreed. This team, came out more disciplined, back to the basics, those fundamentals, and you saw it. So glad to see that. I'm just saying, said here, most encouraging thing was that the defense played competently, but Petrino's offense was a little too spotty. We still don't have that deep threat. I'd love to see an Antonio Jordan and Crutchfield out there. I agree. We talked about that this week where Petrino mentioned getting those guys involved. Didn't see that happen this week. Maybe in the weeks to come you will. I'm sure for at least Antonio Jordan anyway, he's getting back from that injury. So, not sure if Petrino was confident in running him out there just yet, or if he wants to see him get in a good week of practice before running him out there so that way you don't risk re-injuring something and, potentially not having him at all this season. As far as Crutchfield, not sure if he just needs to pick up the playbook a little bit more or if he needs to continue to – getting a little bit more game shape, whatever it may be. But, hopefully by the end of the season, we see those guys get some type of involvement this year because, those are 2 extremely talented guys.
Yeah. And I just want to say, they do look a little spotty, but they are still worlds better than what they were last year when it comes to the red zone. 5 for 5, 4 touchdowns and a field goal. It's hard to ask.
Represent that number of leading the country in red zone touchdown percentage.
Right. And the thing is, it is actually hard to put the loss on the offense, even though we all know that it was the offense who kind of is, deserves the most of the blame for this game. It's hard to do that when they still score 31 points and have almost 500 yards of offense, right? But it's just those little mistakes like the fumbles. And the thing is, all it did was it only took one of those fumbles,
right,
for Tennessee to capitalize on to hurt Arkansas. So,
right. So hopefully we can get away from that. And unfortunately, I said it yesterday, that kind of just continues to increase our lead in most fumbles since 2020 whenever Pittman came in. So, hopefully we can get away with that as we continue on here. But yeah, I mean, so overall,
Hey, some
do
news.
what?
Some news. UAB fires Trent Dilfer too. So.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Yep. It came out a couple minutes ago, it looks like. Yeah.
I was about to say, we'll have some other news that we'll talk about here in a minute that's going to affect potentially Arkansas's coaching search and potentially multiple aspects. So, but yeah, to your point, if you can kind of correct some of those little things, then, I feel like it's to the point of you can only go up from here. I feel like so. Correct the little things, and then get ready for A&M this week. You've got a big game this week coming in. You're honoring McFadden at the game. You open the week, so as the game draws closer, you open the week as just an 8-point underdog, which is very surprising. I get it's a home game, but just with what has happened to Arkansas this season compared to where A&M's at, very surprising. But I love to see that, and it'll probably shrink as we go throughout the weekend. By the time we're previewing this game more in depth on Thursday, who knows where it's going to be. But also, something I thought was interesting, it was put out there. If you look at it, Petrino against Texas A&M. So while he was the head coach at Arkansas, 2009, Arkansas beats A&M 47-19. 2010, Arkansas beats A&M 24-17. In 2011, Arkansas beats Texas A&M 42-38. All Arkansas coaches since 2011, 1-12 against Texas A&M.
Yeah.
So if you want to get into some superstition, it seems like Petrino has A&M's number when it comes to playing them. But again, that was his teams. This is Pittman's teams that he's trying to reshape and reform. And, it'll be in week 2 of game week prep for him as interim coach. So it's going to be interesting to see what will come in this week.
Yeah, and that's a big deal too, because Arkansas and or Texas A&M hasn't traveled to Fayetteville since 2012. I think,
and that's another aspect too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember the last game that Arkansas played A&M here. It was in 2013, and it was when A&M had Johnny Manziel. And then the following year is when we started going down to Dallas for the Southwest Classic. So, it'll be a change of pace. It'll be nice to have them here in Fayetteville. You get some of that home field advantage, if you will. As much as you want to call Dallas halfway in between College Station and Fayetteville, I think it still was heavily, in favor of Texas A&M, and being more like a home game for them. But
yeah,
it should be a fun one.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, there's some kind of curse there, right?
Right.
Let's be honest. There's some kind of curse in Jerry's world that Arkansas needs to stay out of there for the rest of the time.
I agree. So, and Zachary here says, don't forget we were down 3 scores before we tried to make that comeback. Exactly. So, as far as this game, again, if this was Petrino's team, then or Pittman's team, that might not have been the case. But yeah, Angel jumps in here and said UAB probably should try to hire Ryan Silverman or Silverfield from Memphis. And he said, really, Butch Jones is a better coach than Trent Dilfer.
Yeah, I mean, probably not wrong there. Trent Dilfer was just awful. Like I'm still embarrassed that they nearly beat Arkansas in Fayetteville last year. Was it last year? Yeah. But at the same time, I don't think UAB will have enough money to get Silverfield. He's doing incredible stuff at Memphis. With the jobs that are open right now, I don't see him not taking one of those.
Right. And let's talk about this too. There has been 3 coaches fired today Trent Dilfer obviously won. Oregon State fired their coach. And, the one I hinted at earlier, and we'll go ahead and jump into that, is the big one that kind of, I think, surprised a lot of people. I get you're having a down season, but Penn State fires James Franklin.
That's
coming off 3 straight losses. You lose to Oregon in a tough overtime game where it was a close game. I'll give them. You come out and fall flat and lose to winless UCLA. That's not a good look. And then you lose to Northwestern. But hey, this was a Penn State team that just last season was in the college football playoffs. You get a little rash and make a rash decision and fire James Franklin after a few games. Wouldn't be surprised to see Penn State regret that. I haven't kept up with it since, but like within an hour to 2 hours after that firing, Penn State already had like 4 decommitments. And, I think they quoted one of the commits saying, "I can't believe they actually fired James Franklin." So,
yeah. And here's the thing, like I haven't had a whole lot of thought of, okay, this is just my instant reaction. Like I have been a Dan Mullen type of dude for the last, I don't know, week or so. Like I just started to really like them. But there's someone else that has been in the SEC and won in the SEC, which is what I really want to see, that is now available, right? I don't think it happens right now. I don't know. But James Franklin to Arkansas, I mean, how are we feeling about that?
How are you not picking up the phone already? Like, I get it. Like, he got a massive buyout. I don't know what that would look like in terms of if he were to take a job, all the technicalities and legalities in that. But, if I'm Arkansas and a guy like James Franklin is now on the market because, no offense, but Penn State was dumb enough to fire him, how are you not making that call in some way? Now, we'll see if that has some booster support, what kind of traction that gains this week is, as that's fresh today. But, to your point, a guy that won at Vanderbilt of all places in the SEC, like not just winning the SEC, but, we were talking about how Dan Mullen was able to win at Mississippi State. James Franklin was able to win at Vanderbilt.
Right. And back when the SEC was, I don't want to say good, but like elite, right? Or right when they were starting to become elite.
Right.
So yeah, that's insane to me, like that he's even there. So like, yeah, 2011 through 2013. So yeah, at the height of SEC dominance. Here's the thing though. If Arkansas isn't a legit contender for James Franklin, that just means that there's another opening out there that Arkansas has to compete with. And right now, it's the only one that's better than Arkansas that's open right now. Oregon State, no. UAB, no. UCLA,
Oklahoma State, no.
Oklahoma State, no. I mean, you can go down the list of all these openings, and none of them are better than Arkansas right now.
Right.
Penn State, verifiably a better job than Arkansas right now. So,
well, and
not that I don't think that Arkansas could be a better job in the future. It's just it hasn't been.
Right. And you look at it. You go to his head coaching record. Took over Vandy in 2011. He goes 6-7. You're like, all right, first season, not too bad. You almost get to 500, or you do get to 500 and you lose the Liberty Bowl. All right, year 2, you go 9-4. And win the Music City Bowl. 2013, you go 9-4 and win the BBVA Compass Bowl. And you're 24-15 in your first 3 seasons at Vandy in the SEC, which, and then, he takes the job and jumps over to Penn State in 2014. Stop me at a season you would be upset with if this was Arkansas's record. 7-6, 7-6, 11-3, 11-2, 9-4, 11-2, 4-5, maybe that one, but then he bounces back 7-6, 11-2, 10-3, 13-3.
Yeah, that 4-5 was COVID year, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah.
So you kind of have to asterisk that as well.
Yeah. So I think Arkansas would be stupid not to be on a phone call with him today.
Right. At least make the call.
Or at least with, his people, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it would be stupid not to call him. It's Penn State's playing like crap right now, right? Like we all see what's happening, but you can't quantify his entire career at Penn State and at Vandy into this one season.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of like what I was talking about with Dan Mullen, just on a smaller level, because he didn't win as much as James Franklin did. So I think if Arkansas is like, oh, we're going to go after Rhett Lashley or John Summerall or Alex Golish, to me, those are small fish compared to people who have actually played and coached in the SEC and people who have won at that type of level in the SEC. And it's not that I don't think those coaches could do it. It's just I don't think Arkansas can rely on maybe it will happen
to take the chance on a maybe. Yeah.
Right.
And it's to the point that we were talking about, last week was now's the time, if you're serious about this program, flash the money and make James Franklin say no. Like that's the way I'm looking at it. Because if you want to build this football program and you have a coach of this caliber that just, hit the market, if you want to phrase it that way, like, again, it would be dumb if Arkansas is not at least, picking up the phone and saying, all right, I know you just got fired, but hear me out. We've got an opening. You're going to have all the support you need. And, I know they wouldn't say this, but Arkansas will be fine with, not saying we're going to settle, but, to have 7-6, 9-4, 10-win seasons every now and then, 11-win season every now and then.
Right.
Like he could come here and, not be as scrutinized as like the expectations at Penn State, but, come here, compete in the SEC. But also, know if you can win 8-9 games consistently, that you're in a good spot, especially for Arkansas in the SEC.
Yeah, and I mean, look at what his salary was. It was $8.5 million, right? That was his salary. Sam Pittman's was 6.45. So
you're not that far off.
You don't think you can meet in the middle with them a little bit? Say, hey, you know what? We can meet you in the middle, but you're also getting an opportunity to play in the SEC, this, that, and the other. You got to rebuild this team, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it wouldn't be a hard thing to get him to come here, I don't think. I really don't. I don't think there's where else right now would he go?
Right.
Like at maybe Auburn and maybe Florida are going to be better job options than Arkansas going forward. Because, obviously Penn State's another option out there in the coaching search, but he's not going to be an option for them. So that gives everybody else a leg up with this deal. So I don't know, man. It does feel nice. We'll have to see. Plus, heck, he could probably get some of those recruits from Penn State to come to Arkansas. Right. I'm always thinking about that too.
That's what I said. Not only Penn State recruits, but
Penn State
what
players.
About players that could enter the portal and transfer to Arkansas as well.
Right. Because once if he were to come here, he actually sees the facilities we have and all that stuff. He gets on the phone with his players. He's like, bro, they got some good stuff here. I know it's just rinky-dink Arkansas, what you think, but whenever you get here, I promise you, it's going to be nice. And
and the other thing I was going to say too is, there were talks about while he's at Penn State, especially these last few years, where he would go to boosters and ask, and it took, it was like, pulling teeth to try to get some extra funds here and there. But if he can come to Arkansas, build this program, and you're having some success, you're going 9-4, 11-2, 7-6, and you go to the boosters and say, hey, I need a little bit extra. I don't think we're going to be as picky as what Penn State would be and be like, all right, yeah, you're not just going to go out and throw out millions, but you come out and justify what you need. I think Arkansas boosters will take care of you, especially if you have the success that he had at Penn State.
Right. And like we were kind of talking about it. What was it? Was it Sunday? Whenever I talked about how Arkansas's boosters they're not as wealthy as like the big guys, but there's just a lot of them.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is you got a lot of people you got to say no to you before you get a yes, right? Or
right.
Said that wrong. There's a lot of people that you can get a no from, but still get a yes from somebody else. Right. So there's ample opportunity to find those funds somewhere in the program. And not saying that Penn State doesn't have those type of people, funds or whatever, but at the same time, football's different in the South. It just is. Like it doesn't like in the North, it's all about pro football, right? I understand they have one of the biggest stadiums in the world, not just the country, but the world. I know they have a lot of money, but just because they have a lot of money doesn't mean they want to spend a lot of money. In Arkansas, Southern teams, Southern boosters, they will spend the money for you.
Right. Yeah. I'm just saying, jumps in here and says, ideal duo is Houston at AD, Drinkowitz as coach. If not Rhett or Gus, we need people who understands Arkansas and are fundamentally sound. I agree with you on half of this. I agree. I would love the idea of Houston Nutt at AD, but it's like I've said before, I think we just need to drop the whole idea of Gus at coach. He clearly does not want to be here. And I think, he's past his prime, if you will, like he's at, Florida State OC right now, went from being a head coach to OC, has made it very clear before. I don't think he has any interest at coaching at Arkansas. As far as Rhett Lashley, I'm not ruling it out. You're basically getting a young Gus, but, from what I've seen, that's a guy that you're kind of taking a risk on, a guy that's been a head coach just a few years in the ACC. Maybe give him a few more years and, let him get some more experience. And then if he wants to come back home, I understand the idea, but wanting somebody that understands Arkansas, but it's like Yurichek said in the initial presser, I think you can't base that as one of the key things. If there's some Arkansas ties or something, like that helps. But at the end of the day, I think you can't just go off of wanting somebody that has Arkansas ties, that being a requirement. And so Drinkowitz is an interesting thought too, because, I get he is the Arkansas, has that quality and those aspects. And I don't know if Arkansas necessarily passed him over back when we hired Pittman, or what the whole situation was with him. I don't know if we had contact with him, but I just don't know if he specifically would be a good fit for Arkansas either.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to like grasp that argument when it's not historically correct. Look at Arkansas's here's I just pulled up a list, and these are 5 ones that I can think of off the top of it. Frank Broyles, not from Arkansas. Lou Holtz, not from Arkansas. Bobby Petrino, not from Arkansas. You got Ken Hatfield that did really well. He's from West Helena, so he's barely from Arkansas.
Whoa.
Right?
Yeah.
Right there on the border. And then you got Houston Nutt. Those probably the 5 best I would argue 5 best coaches in Arkansas history. 3 of them aren't from the state. One's barely from the state. So,
Right.
like, I don't know where people get this idea that there has to have some kind of ties. I'm like, if we're talking about just some kind of tie to the natural state, Alex Golich, his wife is from Greenwood. Right, that was a
Right.
big thing for a while ago. And having some crazy red-haired Russian dude on the sideline sounds extremely exciting to me. I don't know about you, but that's just like I could think of 100 different memes to come up with. So,
Right.
but yeah, but the drink to Arkansas, like, it's kind of like selling your soul to the devil a little bit, wanting drink to come to Arkansas. Like, I understand it, and I think that Arkansas could do well with him. It's just like, ugh, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like if
Like,
you
it just
knew
doesn't
about
sound right.
right, like if you knew about what Eric Musselman was going to do, like his antics and all the cringy stuff he did, would you want him to be the coach at Arkansas before that? Like, no, you wouldn't have wanted him because that's cringy. But whenever it's here and it's happening, you're winning, you're like, this is great. So
Right.
I don't know. Like, I get the idea about Drink coming here. I just don't like it.
It's a weird one. Yeah. It's like Transplant Texas said. He said Drink likes his role as an Arkansas troll. I don't think he would accept an offer just out of spite.
Yeah.
And then, of course, this one here, Arkansas is more than chickens and cows. Exactly. So,
yeah, they also have Walmart.
Right. And JB
and
Hunt.
big trucks. Yeah.
Big trucks and Walmart. I've seen it described as before as you have the whole process here. You have the company that makes the chicken nuggets, the company that transports the chicken nuggets, and the company that sells the chicken nuggets, all right here in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, like you like your chicken nuggets, you're welcome.
Right.
Northwest Arkansas.
So, another thing to think about too, Transplant Texan brings up this point. He said he did bring the point of Franklin would be a coach of color, which some fans have been asking for, more likely than like a Deion Sanders.
Yeah. I would. It just sucks because I had in my head like this built up thing about Travis Williams being that for Arkansas.
Yeah.
Right. And it, like, as bad as it sucked for him, I still like him. I still think he's going to be a good head coach one day. It sucked for him here in Arkansas. And that just, it kills me.
Right.
But at the same time, yeah, that would be a good thing. But at the same time, I mean, you saw what happened with like Nolan Richardson, and there's still some backwards people in Arkansas, and you're kind of hoping that doesn't happen with whoever the next coach is, because there's some crazy, people out there that will do stuff like that. I just hope it doesn't come to it. So
yeah. Zachary says here, I don't think Houston will be AD. The league is not the old school system. We don't need someone just from the state. Need quality coach who will coach football and bring new ideas on how to and know how to market Arkansas.
Well, here's the thing with Houston Nutt. He knows how to market Arkansas, right? I think that he could get with the times. I don't know if he would. Like, as a coach, I think the game's passed him by. Like, I don't think there's anyone 100%. In the world that's winning. But as an AD, as someone who could sell Arkansas, I don't know, man. I
was about to say, because he loves
do a really good job. Right.
Yeah. Especially the era he was here, he had the honor of being the coach that, coached the most famous trio here. McFadden, Felix Jones, and Peyton Hillis. Like, he was the coach that brought those guys in and was able to, have success with them. And so,
plus, he's got the gift of gab. Like, he can talk your ear off, right?
100%.
And he's a really good storyteller, which is someone you would want to run something like that. Because if you can tell a story, then you can sell, right?
Right. Get
So
out there
he
and
would be a
reminisce
very good
and
seller.
tell stories with all these boosters and these people, these donors, things like that, and things
Right.
that it just seems like your check's not doing. It
Oh
feels
yeah,
like,
it's all business with your check. It seems like, right? I don't know for sure, but everything that I hear is just business. And in Arkansas, you can't do that. In the South, you can't do that. Like, I know Houston is a city. It's hardly what you would call a southern city. It's just a city in the South. Um, so I get that, like how it's hard for him to go from one place to another, but you can't do it without
yeah,
being that type of politician that he's just clearly not.
yeah. I'm just saying, it says Houston was groomed to be the idea by AD by Frank Broyles.
That is true. He was under Frank Broyles for a long time.
So he knows how he kind of ran things. But,
Yeah,
back to your point about Nolan, he said, profit is not without honor except in his own hometown.
yeah,
So, yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like we kind of hinted at the beginning of when we started talking about this, it seems like for the most part, Arkansas's coaching search just got much more interesting, on
yeah. It
top of,
either got a lot harder or a lot easier. So we'll see how it goes.
right. It's like now you got to compete with Penn State, or you can just capitalize on their mistake of firing a really good coach and just bring him on. It either
Right.
makes it more difficult or a little bit easier, if you will. Now, again, it goes back to after just being fired, does Franklin want to jump right back into a new coaching job? Does he want to take some time off? He's getting paid a crap ton of money from his
Yeah.
buyout. So, I mean, it's like Transplant Texan set up here. His buyout would be $666,000 a month. And does that make him more picky, or does his buyout help offset a smaller salary from a school like Arkansas, which is another point. I don't know what all the aspects would be in terms of if he takes a job here, how much of Arkansas would have to pay or how that buyout situation would work. But, what better way to, if, you're coming to Arkansas to that point, and like you said, Austin, meet in the middle, maybe take a little bit less salary knowing, hey, Penn State's still paying me too.
Yeah. I don't know if he has a duty to mitigate either. So he may have to go out and try and find another job.
Right.
I haven't looked at the details of it. But at the same time, yeah, if he comes to Arkansas, Arkansas is not paying Penn State anything. Which is not, you can't say that about like the big, probably three guys that I've heard a lot about are Rhett Lashley, Dan Mullen, John Summerall. You're not
Yep.
going to be able to get them to come to Arkansas without paying those schools something.
Right.
James Franklin, basically he's free. So you can offer him more money on top too.
Right. So, it almost seems like a win-win, but we'll see what happens. I'm sure, like we said, hopefully at least the phone call's being made at the very least. If, I'm in your check shoes knowing that, my seat's very hot, it's like a coach like this is on the market. I'm trying to do everything I can to at least get a conversation with the guy and throw out the idea, be like, hey, why don't you come help rebuild Arkansas? And, not saying that there will be pressure, but I don't think it'll be to the level of what he was at Penn State.
Right. It definitely won't be at the level, because basically they fired him because he couldn't get that national championship. I mean, did he play not in the national championship, but he played against, was it Notre Dame in the semifinals or was it Ohio State? Oh, let's see. Not only that, I mean, they had to play their way all the way up.
Right.
Let's see. Bracket. Because yeah. Let's see. Yeah, they started against SMU, went and beat Boise State, and then lost to Notre Dame. So they had to play their way into it.
Right. And so, you win 2 games to make it all the way to where they did. So it's like,
the
and that
semifinals.
the semis. And so to, see them be able to do that. And then, just looking at it quickly, they played Oregon close last year. You beat, you have a close game with Ohio State last year. You only lose to them by 7. At the end of the day, I mean, it's you beat Indiana last year that made the playoffs as well. And so, I mean, it's hard for me to argue that he's not automatically jumping to the top of the list. At the end of the day, it's
or at least like at the top of Arkansas's list, because right now there's coaches that are really interested in the Arkansas job, that Arkansas is really interested in them too. James Franklin has to be interested in Arkansas first of all. So we'll see. For him, this is the most interesting job open.
Yeah.
For other coaches,
if he wants to get back into coaching, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's what we talked about too. Zachary mentions what we were talking about, his buyout contract structure. We may have to consider how we pay him. Yeah, exactly. It's like Austin was mentioning. I don't know what that looks like, if he's required to go out and search for another job, like Austin was mentioning, or if he does that some of that shift to like Arkansas responsibility, how all that works. So that's something that you do have to consider. So appreciate you joining us, Transplanted. Good time as always. And so, we're already over an hour in here. So only other thing to quickly talk about is men's basketball. We are so close to basketball season. They had a scrimmage done in Little Rock today. You can check out some of those highlights and stats across different social media. Getting to see those guys in action for the first time. I went to the primetime at the Palace the other night. It was a cool event, but they scrimmaged for a little bit, but cut it short because the guys had a pro day in the next, on Sunday, and that was Friday. So wanted to make sure they stayed healthy and were ready for that pro day. But a lot of hype building for basketball. First game, you have an exhibition game coming up October 24th against Cincinnati in Bud. And then your other exhibition is going to be at Memphis before you open the season against Southern in November. So,
yeah, it'll be exciting. I'm ready for it.
100%. So, as we get ready to wrap up and get out of here, do you got anything else, Austin?
Yeah. Did you look at our standings?
Oh, yes, I did. So, I'm glad you mentioned that. It was a weird day.
My butt kicked.
It was a weird day for the Pick'em too, because it had a lot of games that were the away teams where you'd think would be the winners that weren't. But yeah, to update you guys on our Pick'em. So I moved back into the sole owner of first place at 38-32. Hobbs is 37-33. And it's like Austin said, he's dropping a little bit back behind, 33-37. So you might have to be going opposite of Hobbs to make up some ground.
I guess. It's like every single one that I picked against you guys went wrong. So, woohoo. Like, how did Utah beat Arizona State by that much? That's insane.
I mean, they did win. I mentioned it was at home, and Utah's a tough place to play. So,
hey, you know what? What about TCU?
That one, I don't know how to talk about that one. Kansas
Oklahoma,
State,
like, what are you doing? Like, it.
Yeah.
Not a good day. Not a good day for me.
USC taking care of business against Michigan in a big way, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, we'll wrap up. We'll see you guys back here on Thursday as we get ready for our preview show against Texas A&M. It'll be interesting to see what the spread drops down to by the time we get there. So until then, we're going to wrap up and get out of here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go follow us across all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those. And everybody have a great rest of your Sunday, great start to your week. And we'll be back here Thursday for our regular show as we get ready to preview Arkansas coming back home to take on the Texas A&M Aggies as they'll honor McFadden and during that game. And it'll be the first home game with Bobby P back as head coach in the interim basis. So it'll be another fun one. So with that, Austin and myself, we're going to get out of here. Everybody have a great beginning of your week this week, and we'll see you on Thursday.